Grego Gallagher, the modern day Bruce Wayne. Also known as Kinobody, he's the fitness influencer who popularized intermittent fasting. Now, one thing that sets Kinobody apart from other fitness influencers are his boulder shoulders. I mean, the man literally has 2 bowling balls in his shoulder sockets, and this capped out look is one of the reasons this guy can look so damn aesthetic at 5'10", 170 pounds. While the shoulders are one of the most widely hit muscle groups out there, one thing I noticed is that most people struggle to build those 3D Death Star delts.
Go hit shoulders, punk ass bitch.
You'd assume that since every Tuesday is shoulder day for most gym bros, most guys in the gym would have aesthetic looking shoulders, but that's really far from the case. The good news is, in today's video, I'm gonna cover 3 shoulder exercises to include in your workout routine so that you can start developing that Kinobody capped out look. Before we dive into the exercises, first I wanna cover the anatomy of the shoulders. So the shoulders are made up of 3 primary parts: the anterior delts or front delts, lateral delts or side delts, and then finally the posterior delts or rear delts. While all 3 heads of your shoulder share the same insertion, they have different origin points, which is why you have to perform different movements to target them. Put simply, to target your front delts, you must perform shoulder flexion. To target your side delts, you want to perform shoulder vertical abduction, raising your arms up to the side. Last but not least, to target your rear delts, you want to perform shoulder horizontal abduction, basically just bring your arms behind you like this. So the thing about shoulders that most people fail to realize is that when you train your shoulders, you really only need to target your lateral and posterior delts, or basically your side and rear delts. And the reason for this is because you get a lot of front delt work in when you perform pressing movements such as the bench press. So this means that as long as you're hitting your chests frequently, then you really don't need to perform front delt isolation work. Also, since the rear delts are a smaller muscle group and most lifters have underdeveloped rear delts, I actually recommend hitting your rear delts just as frequently as your side delts. Too often people will train their front delts and side delts and just neglect their rear delts. But the thing is, since the shoulders are comprised of these 3 groups, if your rear delts are underdeveloped, you won't get that 3D look. Okay, now to dive into the must-do exercises. Exercise number 1 is the dumbbell lateral raise. This is pretty much the classic shoulder exercise when you bring your arms up to the side. And then one pro tip is to turn your wrists inwards and then imagine you're holding 2 cups of tea. You want to imagine you're trying to pour the tea out at the top of the motion. So something such as this. And the thing about doing the dumbbell lateral raise like this is you're really going to focus on your side delts. Now, exercise number 2 that you must be doing is the leaning one-arm cable lateral raise. So the primary difference between doing a dumbbell lateral raise versus a cable lateral raise is that the cable lateral raise is going to have constant tension on the movement, whereas something such as a dumbbell lateral raise has the most tension at the top of the movement. So put simply, you basically just want to hit the same movement pattern, which is just like the lateral raise, using different type of load patterns. And the reason that I really like the leaning one-arm cable lateral raise is because not only do you get constant tension throughout the motion, but I also find that you can get amazing mind-muscle connection throughout the lift. So what exactly is mind-muscle connection? You might have heard this phrase before and it kind of sounds like bullshit, but the truth is when you're performing the movement, whether it's for the shoulders or even something such as the biceps, you know, you're hitting curls for the girls, you really want to focus on flexing the muscle. The better mind-muscle connection you have typically means that you have better control of the weight and you're activating the muscles and contracting them more efficiently. Anyways, enough about mind-muscle connection. Let's hop right into the third and final exercise, which is a rear delt fly. So essentially, if you think about a chest fly where you bring your arms together like you're giving a hug, a rear delt fly is just the reverse of that. So basically just pulling your arms apart by driving your elbows back like this. So my personal favorites are the reverse pec deck, cable rear delt fly, and face pull. I would say just do one of these movements each shoulder day, making sure to hit your rear delts just as much as your side delts, and you'll be on your way to developing boulder shoulders. Okay, last but not least, I'm gonna cover 3 mistakes to avoid when you're hitting your shoulders. And by avoiding these mistakes, you'll be growing bigger shoulders than everyone else. So mistake number 1 is performing front raises. I've already mentioned this briefly earlier in the video, but essentially you don't need to hit your front delts, since as long as you're not skipping chest day, you'll be targeting your front delts with enough volume where hitting front delts is a little bit of an overkill, since you might develop front delts that are bigger than your side delts and rear delts proportionally. But on top of that, you're just wasting time that you could be using to hit your side delts and rear delts. So you got to think about when you're going to the gym, what's the opportunity cost of your time and energy, and how do you really maximize the time spent in the gym. Mistake number 2 is using too much weight on lateral raises. I see people at the gym going way too heavy on lateral raises. They're basically just using their entire body to swing it up like this, and they're essentially just working out their back muscle with how much momentum they're using. This is honestly a symptom of ego lifting. So ego lifting is essentially lifting too much weight at the gym in hopes of impressing people. But honestly, ego lifting is pretty counterintuitive, since if you have a good physique, you don't really need to show it off, since you let your work do the talking for you. Actions speak louder than words. Unfortunately, with ego lifting, the dumbbell lateral raise is one of those movements that gets butchered in terms of people just going like way too heavy and swinging, and I would recommend just not doing this. The quality of your rep matters way more than how much weight you use. The third and final mistake people make is neglecting to hit rear delts. So this is extremely common as well, since the reason that most people lack that 3D delt look is they just don't have any rear delts. And there's a greater problem at play. I think in general, people tend to hit their anterior chain or the front of their body a lot more than their posterior chain or back of the body. You also see this reflected in like the caveman physique, where people have like hunched shoulders and they look like cavemen since they only hit chest and forget to hit back. But this actually also applies to the delts, where people hit their front delts, a little bit of side delts, and then no rear delts. But you can avoid this mistake by hitting your rear delts as much as your side delts. And that's a wrap, guys. Basically what I did today was I talked about the shoulder anatomy. I then covered 3 must-do shoulder exercises. And then last but not least, I went over 3 mistakes to avoid when you're hitting your shoulders. So if you implement the advice in this video, you'll be well on your way to developing your own boulder shoulders.